Hey guys, it's Matt. I want to make a prediction in what you all are going through because typically what I go through is what you go through, although I don't interact with almost anyone, so my sample size is extremely low. But I think if the ship of fools theory is correct and we years ago dove off the back, we typically go through similar things at the same time. So my sample size is tiny, but I'm going to predict most of us are going through this. And this is the fourth time I'm trying to get this out. I can't get through the first minute and a half. I go, that didn't make any sense. So I'll just try to be as clear as possible. Say you have 15 people around you in your circle of family, friends, people you've known a long time. Now, we need to remove two groups. We'll remove them in a second, but out of who's left, how many that are who is left are letting you down? You're growing further apart. You have nothing in common with them. The little things that bothered you in them are just growing worse. How many are letting you down versus the opposite of that? And what would be the opposite of that? Someone saying, "Oh, I have a cousin, Matt, that I really wasn't that close to, and boy, in the last 2 years we've grown close." And there's half the people are letting me down, Matt, but half, I'm surprised how much I want to be around them, or I don't know how to say it, but unfortunately, you know what my prediction is going to be, that almost everybody around us, other than in these two groups, are letting us down. And again, I just want to say that if this is your experience as it is mine, this is normal and it is absolutely a necessary byproduct of the ship of fools theory, or those that have doved off the cliffs of Dover off the back of the ship of fools. This has to happen. We have to grow further apart. When someone is on the ship and now they're how many miles down the road, and a few years from now they'll be more miles down the road, I don't see any situation where that can bring you closer to them. So the qualities in them that are, quote, letting you down or bothering you or pissing you off, it's just going to get worse and magnified. So say again, the 15 people around you, the two groups. One is if you have certain people may say, look, I've always had a great relationship with my brother, and that's been consistent. And hey, hopefully it should be. You've known each other how long? 30, 40, 50, 60 years. Someone may say, or a certain friend that kind of sees the world the way we see it, we've grown closer because we realize we're in this tiny little foxhole together. So if there's anybody around you, I don't expect them to investigate the hardcore stuff that we do, but if in any way they see the world the way we do, at least to a small degree, a part of them is like off the ship of fools. I don't expect, that could you could even grow closer with them. And again, just long-term reliable family members that have always been reliable, that you've always meshed with. Uh, when you remove those two groups out of who's left in your life, old friends, family, I don't know, people even at work that you've had to interact with for 10 years and you've always kind of got along with, how many are letting you down? And I'm not putting this the right way. I don't know how to put this, but I'm not going to record this again. Little things, little traits in people that may, if they're on the ship of fools, I'll give you a trait that drives me insane is cheapness. I think in terms of the life test or whatever I'll write up as that one page to finalize the book that's being read now. I mean, if you are cheap with your money and you have any degree of it, that is failing the life test across the board. You have learned nothing if you are cheap or covet money. And it's just, look, guys, it's important, especially if you have a family, have a little bit of extra, of course. You have to plan for your kids and all, of course. Not everybody's in the situation that I'm in. We're turn $1 billion down to somebody knocking at the door, taking away a cat that's pissing all over my house. I mean, not everybody's in the situation that I'm in, but I'll give you an example. In other words, for those on is the traits that bother you and the people that are on the ship of fools, part of my prediction here is it's getting magnified in terms of how you just can't relate to them. And I don't want to, how can I make a prediction for tens of thousands of collective situations and relationships per the people that are going to listen to this based on who do you interact with, Matt? Next to nobody, but I know we all go through the same thing at the same time. So one way the ship of fools theory could be broken is if we are actually fostering better relationships, or our frequencies are more in tune with those that we would classify as on the ship of fools, because they interpret the news exactly as the Anderson Cooper says, without saying the absurd nature of it. They believe in the political system, and they'll go campaign in the next presidential debate. I mean, who would possibly take the next presidential cycle seriously? I don't know, but those in the ship of fools will. Those in the ship of fools applaud India and the ISRO for doing that incredible thing that they did. It's just okay. So, in other words, from a frequency and radio station perspective, I don't think it's possible for somebody in the comments to say, "Well, Matt, these family members are on the ship of fools. They believe every bit of the news, but my relationship with them is getting better, and these things that used to irritate me about them, it's kind of going away. It's getting." I would just predict, unfortunately, that I don't think we'll see many of those comments. I think we're all in the same boat in this regard. And I'm saying it's normal and it's natural and it's actually a good thing. If they're on the ship, right now the ship is, when did we div and dove off of? 5 years ago, well, whatever it was for you, where yes, we saw things that weren't right in the world, but we going into the bog of conspiracy and investigating every little thing about what happened to the side of the Pentagon, diving into that bog is not diving off the back of the ship of fools. That is basic. If you're smack right in the middle of the bog, in a way, you're still on the ship of fools. Just because you investigate conspiracy, you haven't exited the ship of fools. That is a segment on the ship of fools. Like Jack was put in steerage, I think they said in Titanic. How are the accommodations in steerage, Jack? What do you say? Smallest rats I've seen, ma'am, or something like that. If you're in the bog researching the bullshit conspiracy that we did, and we had to go through it to get out of it, you're still on the ship of fools. So, um, I've recorded this a few times because it didn't make sense. I think I talked about earlier cheapness. Sometimes when I re-record, I go, did I say that in the one I just deleted or in this one? Cheapness, uh, not frugality, planning for the future for a family, or just plain out cheapness, is, to me, there is no bigger characteristic of just failing the entire life test. But here's a story I'll tell you. It's just almost unfathomable. I won't give any names or how I know this person or who told me the story about who they know. But let's just say a friend of mine has a friend who's well off. You know, husband, we'll just say, makes a lot of money. His father has a ton of money, and not hundreds of millions of dollars, but it's very, very comfortable. Okay. Now this person is cheap. Okay, they frugal to the point of cheap. They're very, very comfortable, but going over every menu item. And was there a special on the fries today? These fries are listed at $4.50, and waiter, I think they should have been $3.50. I mean, stuff that just would drive, I guarantee would drive almost anybody listening this crazy. Cheapness is a gigantic symptom of an NPC, or somebody smack in the middle of the ship of fools. So anyway, the story, let me just tell this story. She's like this to begin with, but it's like really obnoxious frugality more than just, anyway. So she meets up with somebody who's been super successful. This is a guy, and they're meeting in New York City, and they hadn't seen each other for years. Maybe he's a lawyer, I forget, but or a big advertising executive. I don't know, probably somebody, makes 500, 600,000 a year, whatever, does very well for many, many years, is in his 50s. So they spend on and off 2 days together, as old friends. And let me just get to the point because I'm sorry, this is going so long. At the end, it's unfathomable. He says to her, "Oh, you paid for this, I paid for this, and you owe me $7." Uh, I don't even know what to say. He had scored. Maybe they went to see a show, Wicked or something. Is that still on Broadway, or Hamilton? And then, or they dinner and then drinks, and then they met up the next day. And okay, you owe me $7. People are like that. I can't fathom it. And I know it screams of the NPC. And I'm not sure a real person can be on the ship of fools. Oh, no, I mean, they can be. Don't cut me off after that. And still be that ridiculously cheap. It almost has to be a symptom of the NPC. But this has to do with back to the main premise of the little things and people that are around us as the ship sails further away. Um, the things that bothered us, and people letting us down. For me, it's just getting more magnified. The traits I like in certain people in my circle or who I still interact with, certain traits that are still very strong that I like in a lot of people. But the ones that bother me, I'm telling you, it's like somebody put it in that damn, what is it, stereo and jacked up the Joel. I hear a preponderance of bass. He's got all the damn dials turned up. Joel Goodson. Princeton can use a man like Joel. He invited the admissions officer to his party with his hookers and whores. It's like the stuff that bothers me in the people on the ship that I know are still on the ship. It's like the dial's been turned up to 10. I was thinking we need to do 5 minutes, like a refresher. Old guard, they go back to sleep. You don't need to be. A refresher on what the Ship of Fools theory is all about. There's new people that come and go. And it has to do with literal, in my opinion, metaphysical processes, frequency, resonance, being on the download or not on the download, on the radio station of the not nilk or not on the radio station of the not nilk. And in terms of how we grow apart from people who just keep believing in the news, the not nilk systems, the best way I've ever been able to put it together to describe it is they're on the Pacific Princess, the Love Boat, the Ship of Fools. We dove off the. I still don't know what it is, and it's better to keep that mystery, guys. Don't try to tell me if it's dived or dove. I think we need to keep that mystery going. It's part of what we do here. We dived off years ago, but then that means we've exited its frequency, its resonance, its radio station, its download. And I mean it's literally a download in terms of how people still believe in this political system. There's mechanisms or a spell of some kind or technologies or reality buttons and levers at play that we don't understand why the people on the ship are so fooled. But it's a metaphysical difference. It's a real difference between, it's not just a way of saying something, in other words. And as they remain on the ship, the longer they remain on that frequency or radio station or download, however you want to put it, the more we will grow further and further apart from them. By that notion, again, I don't think it's possible that you're not going to agree with me that these people are pissing you off even worse. This that bothered you is now 10 times worse. These people are letting you down where in the past it was just kind of equal. I don't think if the comment section are saying otherwise, then which of course, it's easy to predict that we're all kind of going through the same situation at the same time. But for anybody new, if you exit the ship, okay, it's a metaphysical processes of it's real. It's not just a way of saying something. It's real. The reality, literal reality on the ship is not for those on the ship is not quite the same as ours. I don't, for anybody new, that's impossible. Well, Matt, the Kansas City Chiefs won the Super Bowl last year, and that will be consistent in our realities, and I think that would be consistent in our realities. But we're pretty sure at this point that there are differences in literally in realities where that would not seem possible. That have to do with the differences. The reality starts at the heart center reality bubble. What generates it out? What type of being it is? What type of incarnation? Talked briefly about that in the last book chapter. Melvin P. We always sensed, of course, that the Melvin P's of the of the Belinda and Melvin P. Gates Foundation, we always sensed that they're not the same as us, and it's different in some way. And we said there are demons and this and that, but nobody explained it in a way that resonated me from when Tony first explained it to me 4 years ago. And I'll just do it briefly because it's the most fascinating thing in the world. explained, Matt, they are completely different than you and me, and they have a different sort of higher self and a different relationship. It's a lower incarnation or a different incarnation. It's a different relationship, he would say, quote unquote, with their higher self, where they are more of a role player here, where you come in, you've taken the bigger leap of the bigger risk coming in as Tommy, the deaf, dumb, and blind kid. I mean, he's explaining spiritually they are literally different. And as the first, he had emailed me about this first, and I read it, and it just, I mean, how would I know? But the inner knowing was like, yeah, that's exactly right, and explains everything we struggle with. But how could this group just continuously get off on, screwing over the people and, robbing the people of certain, we'll just say, pause cures and uh, withholding free energy and just constant. There have to be some sort of demon. Well, they are some sort of demon, but they're a role player in this reality and a literal different spiritual incarnation. But the last word on this, and I've talked about it before, as Tony has explained it to me, but they can get to where you are or where I am someday, but they're game addicted and not ready to go there. But to the first grade truther, it would seem the opposite because everything here is an inverse. Everything here is a refraction or inversion. To the first grade truther, would say, "What you people must be making yourselves feel good." We look at Melvin P. and his ilk and the Rothschilds or the Rockefellers and the bloodlines. They have all the control, all the power, all the wealth, but everything here is an inversion. If they have that here, what do you think the real answer is when you get outside this little snow globe? That they're lower. Of course. I'm not just saying that to make ourselves feel better. Everything here is backwards. They're a big fish in a small pond. This doesn't seem like a small pond. The reality is out to convince you this is all there is. But in the scheme of all that there is, all that there will be, this is a small pond, a very small pond. And yeah, there are big fish here. And while we're here, we're not big fish. Well, so what? Like, okay, we're bigger than the pond, bigger. Uh, anyway, we're not just saying this to make ourselves feel good. If you feel it, I know it, you know it, inner knowing. But even if we didn't have that, say, well, everything in this entire reality is backwards and a lie or an inversion or refraction. Well, then why would that buck the trend? Why would that be any different? Anyway, so what was I talking about? Oh, the ship of fools. Um, it's a it's a literal difference in reality in some way we can't understand. It's not just a way of saying something. It is I keep going back to the word metaphysical because I don't know any other word that could even get close. What language exists to talk about the type of horse shit that we're talking about here? I don't know what language to use. Try to deliver this type of presentation in some sort of double Dutch bus pig Latin. See how that works. Is it doubles as such? Sorry. Um, so guys, the ship of fools is real, and those that are still on it, like my friend Tony, the nuances or the little things that bother, and it's the same. It works the other way. The things that bother him in me, I'm sure, are magnified back to him. No doubt about it. I can't. I know how many times he's rolled his eyes and complained to his wife about, oh, and he'll blame me. Matt has to start talking about conspiracy again. I just know him, so well that he's here. Guess what Matt started talking about again? But then I've tried to say, well, it wasn't really my fault because he's the one that brought up the moon landing. I don't bring it up, but I still take the bait, and I know I'm wrong because he brings up the moon landing, and then what am I going to say? Oh yeah, I like that Neil Armstrong folk too. I like that buzzed cauldron. I have a poster of him. I have to then, of course, take the bait and be like, you believe in that? Where so I hear somebody yelling at me right now saying, of course, like Agent Smith, the Matrix, the principle of the Matrix. Not like Agent Smith jumped into Tony, but there, Matt, didn't you expect a frequency? You talk about the Ship of Fools, a download of some kind, a radio station that's going to get or inspire or nudge Tony or what suggest is the word I'm looking for, suggest to Tony that he mention the moon landing to Matt, where he believes it's his own thought, but the Matrix has to then try to get under Matt's skin, so Matt reacts to it in a certain way. You believe in that? So then what it creates a fight. So ultimately, I'll try to convince myself, I didn't mention it, but I'm wrong. We're off the ship. We should be the bigger person. We should see we're the first one. If the bait is taken, we're the ones to blame because we're the only ones that see the big picture of what's going on. And I don't know. You know, I need to practice more what I preach. Maybe next time, who knows if we'll ever even get together again. It always ends up in a big conspiracy fight. I told you about the one two back, which was about V'ger of Voyager 1 and 2. I couldn't let it go. I was wrong. I'm the one that caused the problem because I should know better. We should know better. I said, V'ger, you believe in I'm going to call it I called it Voyager to Tony, but you believe in V'ger? 35 to 37 years past its expected shelf life, out billions of miles away with like a dish pointed exactly in the right direction while one object is moving 50,000 miles away and the other object's moving 50,000 miles away in the other direction. You think it's pointing its in. What's powering it? Is there somebody that goes out there and scrapes the ice off the D batteries, or how's that solar cell doing 35 years past its expected life? It's not like different realities. It's literally different realities. There's no problem to him. Made perfect sense. Well, I'm saying in his reality on the ship, that can make perfect sense. We're the ones that have dove out of the reality. So, it just makes that ridiculous thing that the ISRO, what half the truth community still believes it was the real spaceship when, that animation that they did it in such a way so people would believe it was real. And obviously it was an animation. But either way, it was a joke. It was a if some third grader was asked to put together a project and the school project for the elementary school science fair final was let's put together a little show pretending you're bringing an object into the moon. That's what they would put on the third graders. Either way, it's an absolute joke, but there's a metaphysical difference and there's a difference in realities between me and you and those on the ship. I'm sure to Tony, Matt, what would be why do you always have to see a conspiracy? What's the problem? India landed on the moon. What's wrong with what was going on in that control room? Well, he wouldn't see it, and he would be right. The reality of this place is the ship. We're the ones chosen to dive off of it. We're wrong. They're right. We're wrong. That doesn't mean we want to go back and merge with it or join it. But don't ever forget, um, whether it even be a mall event or a school event or a ridiculous Mitch McConnell glitch out. I mean, he glitched out. Yeah, he glitched out again. It could be we see it a certain way. We're wrong because the only metric or basis of what is correct is the reality itself. What is correct here? Here in this place, when you drop something, it falls. It's gravity. There's certain rules of this place. So it's the rules or metrics of this place is all that matters. His interpretations and those on the ship are correct because they're interpreting this place the way it wants to be interpreted. We're seeing it differently in our own way. Obviously, we're right, but in terms of where we are now, we're wrong. You know, um, I don't have a better analogy than that. But if we take the bait, we're wrong. If I'm going to be stupid enough to get into a debate with Tony about V'ger, per where I am inside this reality, I'm the one that's wrong. We're ultimately, we know we're right, but where are we? We're on their turf, playing on their field right now. We're in this place. This place has rules, and every bit of it lines up with them, not with us. So we get into arguments or things like that. It's on us. It's our fault. technically, by every standard and metric and of this reality, we are wrong. To me, I'll just end with this. I've said it before, but this reality is one gigantic Mandela effect. And it absolutely relates. If you're thinking about Kit Kat dashes and you're going to need a bigger boat, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about something much bigger. There are shifts in reality that happen, hundreds probably, thousands a day. We all line up or resync to most of them, even you and me and Tony and your best friends and your cousins. We all line up to whatever changes. Why the reality operates this way or it's fluid, who knows? But it is. It is. There's just too many examples where it gives itself away in this regard. So it's it absolutely the Mandela effect in general relates to the ship of fools. If you are, let's say, there's somebody here in this reality that's the most fooled, that is able to just would never question anything. And maybe there's thousands that are equally most fooled to the same degree. Right smack in the middle of the ship of fools, getting a drink served to them by Isaac and Vicky. Now, those people, when something happens, whatever it may be in reality, could be a traditional Mandela effect, like Curious George without a tail, or whatever it may be, or just something strange that happens, they reset to it, and it seems completely normal to them if they're on the ship. The farther you are off the ship, when something happens or a new normal happens to reality, you're off the ship. You don't reset to it. You're set or synced up to another reality that no longer exists. That's why we're wrong. You're synced up to the past. The easiest way to say is we're attached to a reality that exists in the past in some way. But it has continued to morph and change metaphysically, and we don't sync up to it. So those that poo-poo the Mandela effect in this community that don't, Matt, I don't see no Kit Kat dashes and all that little shit that you talk about. Oh, little shit like Australia moving 1,000 miles north, little stuff like oh, I guess it's a psyop because the little blue people that work for the governments of this world, the little blue people, they moved Australia 1,000 miles north. Well, Matt, they can do that on a map without anybody. No, well, I think Australians that live in North Australia know how far they are from Papua New Guinea. I don't think they could fake that. It's not a psyop, not just for that reason, but it's not those that scream psyop regarding the Mandela effect. They're always they're very insistent on keeping that argument bound between the bookends of little trivial things like the vampire and a vampire. It's much bigger than that. But anyway, if those that complain about the Mandela effect, if you generally understand what I'm saying about the ship of fools, and this analogy resonates with you, and you say, yeah, I'm just these people, like the way this video started, I'm growing more apart. What bothered me in these people is bothering me more. If this person's cheap, they seem cheaper, and everything's irritating me more, and I'm sure I'm irritating them as well. If you resonated with any part of the ship of fools analogy, then you're Mandela affected, because that it's no different. That's how it works, because their reality is evolving down the river of insanity. It is changing and morphing in terms of what is expected as normal. Where we look at this presentation of whatever they're going to do in this presidential cycle or the Indian landing, and we just say, this is, how can these people not see this? It's it's the Mandela effect, just in a different degree. Their reality on the ship is changing. We're not syncing up, and not we're syncing up with a lot of it still. Maybe things in nature. I've floated this strange stuff in the past. A certain tree out your window. Well, Matt, that red oak tree always turns a bit red in the fall with just a hint of yellow, or always been. Maybe it was a completely different color last year. The principle of the Mandela effect is any sort of reality change happens, you sync up to the new reality, and then it has always been that way back through time in retrocausal fashion. You'll remember, well, I remember as a second grade kid, that same tree was red. It wasn't that color you're saying. Well, I know there's a change, and it's the only way to describe it. It ripples back through time, and there's no other way to say it than it's always been like that, which makes no sense. Well, how could there be a change if it's always been like that? Well, that's the way it works. most of the people still that chime in on Mandela effect videos, even that are interested in the topic, still don't understand it. They'll chime in. Somebody will float something about what was the last one that the guy was talking about? He was talking about Johns Hopkins versus John Hopkins, and somebody chimes in the comments, "No, I remember as a kid, it's always been Johns Hopkins. John Hopkins is not a Mandela effect for me. I don't know either way. It doesn't mean anything to me." But somebody will chime in, "I remember as a kid, it was always Johns." That you don't understand the Mandela effect. Of course, it was always like that for you as a kid, because whatever happens, there's no other way to talk about it, goes back through time where it has always existed. The strangest thing about it is if that's the case, why do the residuals exist? That's the most frustrating thing. But if the residuals didn't exist, we really would be questioning ourselves a lot more than we do. I'm grateful for the residuals because it really supports what I so clearly remember. But if the residuals were 100% consistent in terms of syncing up with what exists now, we would have a tougher time questioning ourselves, going, how could that be? The residuals make us very confident in our positions. Um, how did this turn into a Mandela? It's related because the ship of fools, reality changes hundreds of times a day. If you're on that ship, you sync up with every change. That's why the presentations on the news to them, and Tony would say, why do you have a problem with this? What came on the news? It would look completely normal to him. Where to us, it's like that just, in the old reality, you couldn't present something like that without somebody laughing, or up and down. It's a joke. But he's not wrong. And see, Tony's not fooled. He's not fooled per the traditional definition. He has synced up to literally a new reality or new metaphysics. It's no different than the Mandela effect. So again, if you can a lot of people in this community are still triggered by it. Most of those people have left this channel, but those people that complain about the news and politics, they're Mandela affected because they're rooted to an old standard or an old reality. And it's just a different manifestation of the same process. It's not really any different than a Kit Kat Dash change or any little trivial, oh, you Mandela people are interview the vampire, a vampire, just trivial horse shit, trivial stuff. Well, Australia moving 1,000 miles north isn't trivial. And Matt, you do realize that if certain family members see this video, they could have you put away. Well, they could try. Just wanted to close out by saying something quickly about email. I would say, guys, over the last 5 years, I've been able to reply to over 90% of all the emails I've ever gotten. I just can't do it anymore. There's potentially, people coming and going, potentially 100,000 people here. Not 1,000, 100,000. I can't do hours of email anymore. I hope this channel wouldn't exist without everything that's what's been shared with me by Tony and people I could just rattle the names off that have incredible insights on reality. I hope that keeps coming. I will see it. It's just very little I can reply to at this point. I can't do hours and hours of email every day. I've been at this 7 days a week for 10 years without a day off, without a day, without a week, nothing. The days I'm not making videos, I'm writing the book or I'm doing email. I just need to do some things for myself, meaning not to go off to Caesar's Palace. I need to paint the house. I need to repair the woodpecker holes. I just need to maybe go away for 2 days and not have come back and there's just hundreds and hundreds of emails. Without it just piling up. I just need to tell you I'll see it, and I hope you keep sharing those insights with me. But unless it really calls for a reply, I'm not sure I can reply to nearly what I used to, and I just need to do this for me at this point. It would be unfortunate if people didn't share what they have, because I would say, 50% of this channel is from all the incredible things people have shared. So you understand I don't know what catch 22 means exactly, but it's a catch 22 me saying this. I guess there's people that email me a lot and I'm not sure I can reply like I used to. Maybe that's the way I should have said it right off the bat. Thanks, guys.